Good evening. Hi. Thank you for coming to hear the talk, and I hope you will stay later for the film. I'm not sure how many of you were last night at the screening of last night, so I hope I will not bore you with some repetitions that will occur. But there will be some repetitions, I promise. So, okay, what I will try to talk about tonight is about two films that I made. The film that is going to be screened after this talk, the first 54 years. And a film I made earlier, was released in 2008, called Z32. What is similar between the two films is that they both are derived from testimonies of Israeli soldiers concerning their service in the Palestinian occupied territories in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and that those testimonies were collected by an organization called Breaking the Silence. Now, Breaking the Silence is an organization that was founded in 2004. It started with a young Israeli soldier who just finished his three-year service in the Israeli army. His name is Yehuda Shaul. And he was so upset or so shocked by the 3 years he spent implementing the Israeli occupation in the West Bank, that when he finished his service, he felt there was a need to do something. He felt that the community he lived in, the Israeli Jewish community, was not aware of what the Israeli soldiers were sent to do in the occupied territories. The Israeli community either was not aware or was reluctant to know what was done in their name by the soldiers. And in the beginning, or when he approached me and another artist called Mickey Kratzman, a photographer, who are both active for many, many years, politically active for many, many years, he had a very modest idea, and this was to do a photographic exhibition of photographs taken by soldiers in the town of Hebron, which is a Palestinian town in the West Bank. Photographs taken by soldiers during their service. And obviously photographs that are exposing some of the things, the actions, the mechanisms that they have used and done in implementing, in maintaining the occupation of Hebron. And as we were preparing the photographic exhibition, Yehuda also said, listen, some of my peers, some of my colleagues in the unit where I served in Hebron have agreed to testify in front of a video camera and tell what they have, things that they have done. So we will not have only photographs, still photographs, but we could also do some video testimonies. And this is how Breaking the Silence started. At the time, well, the exhibition was called Breaking the Silence, but the organization was born only after the end of the exhibition. So we had lots of still photographs. We had a display of car keys. Car keys that were confiscated from Palestinians in checkpoints. You know, sometimes the Israeli soldiers, their way of punishing a Palestinian for maybe traveling without a permit would be to confiscate his car keys and send him on foot to wherever he wanted to go and leave the car next to the checkpoint, and would tell them to return the following day or a few days later to pick up the car. And sometimes when they would return, there would be other soldiers at the checkpoint, and nobody would know where the keys were kept. And so there were a lot of car keys left without the owners having them back. A lot of times the owners of the keys of the car came with the spare keys to pick up the car. They were smart enough, they knew. But other times they needed to burglar their own cars in order to retrieve them. So there was a display of, I don't know, 30, 40 sets of car keys that were left in Yehuda's unit. And there were a few screens of videos of soldiers, ex-soldiers, veteran soldiers, testifying about what they have done. For instance, telling about how the car keys were taken. And at the time, because it was not clear how those testimonies will be accepted by the viewers or by the authorities, they were all blurred. Their faces were blurred, and basically it was a very strange, these were very strange videos of, you could see there is someone under the blur, but you couldn't see his expressions. You could hear his voice, but it was, you know, digitally, like sometimes you see on television, you know, those techniques of concealing the identity of a speaker. So it would be a little bit of a digital voice, and we had it all subtitled so that you could understand and follow the video. But, you know, basically what it was like reading a text. It was not a real video. It was on screen, but it was not a real video. You saw a blurred image of someone and a blurred sound of someone's voice, and very sharp subtitles. So, and this is something that will have to do with the film I made, Z32. Anyway, the exhibition was a huge success. Thousands came, and especially the busy day of the week was Friday. The weekend in Israel starts on Friday. We have a Friday, Saturday weekend. Sunday is already a work day. So on Friday, mostly during from noon and on, there were many, many visitors to the exhibition. And what was interesting was that there were many soldiers in uniform and with their personal weapon. They were on their way from the army for a weekend off at home, and sometimes, and they came to see the exhibition, and sometimes their families also joined them at the exhibition. And the most amazing thing that happened was that you would see soldiers that we didn't know doing private tours inside the exhibition to their families. So it was for us fantastic, also because the pictures were taken by certain soldiers in a certain place in Hebron, but apparently they were universal enough so that other soldiers who were not present where the pictures were taken, for instance, pictures of kids being detained, pictures of that were taken through the, how do you call it, the telescope on a sharpshooter's rifle, sniper rifle, things like that, or people handcuffed and blindfolded, etc. So the pictures were so universal that other soldiers who were not connected to the pictures could give their family a tour. And obviously, when some of us followed those tours, it was all clear, and it was as if the persons that were involved in this, in collecting those photographs, were telling them. It was all very precise and clear. Whenever I drink, it's not because I'm thirsty, it's because my mind needs to work for a second. So, and by the way, please feel free to ask any question as long as it relates to what I'm talking about. For more general questions, we'll have some time at the end. So let's not start a separate talk during. But if you need to ask anything concerning what I'm talking about, please feel free. So the exhibition was so successful, and also it was not only Yehuda Shaul, this veteran soldier that was involved, but also some of his peers, some of the soldiers that served in the army with him, and that led all of us to decide to do more. And obviously, the video testimonies that were so strong became the main feature of what became Breaking the Silence, the organization. So from Breaking the Silence, the exhibition, we became an organization, mostly young veterans and two older people, myself and Mickey Kratzman, and we are still, both of us, at the board of the organization. We are involved in making the strategic decisions of where the organization is headed. And in the early, in the first maybe 2 years, we didn't have any money. And all the work was completely based on volunteering. Only later we started developing a system of collecting of fundraising, and well, now this is the biggest NGO, human rights NGO organization in Israel. We have support from many foundations and also governments, mostly from Europe, but also individuals contribute to funding this organization. So during the time of where all the work was volunteering, I did what my part was in listening to audio testimonies. At the time, we collected the testimonies on audio because we were not going to reveal the identity of the speakers anyway, so we collected the testimonies on audio, and then the audio was transcribed, edited, and printed in booklets or on posts, Facebook posts, etc., etc. And my job was to listen to audio testimonies and log them. Some of you who are filmmakers or editors know the term to log, to mark the parts that are interesting or what should be transcribed or what should be left from after the editing of a very long testimony. And at a certain point, I came across one testimony, which the code number of was Z32. Z was our code mark for all testimonies, and 32 basically tells you when chronologically this testimony was collected. Today we are in Z almost 2000 or something. So, but this is 18 years later, okay? And the story that Z32 told in the testimony was about a revenge operation. One night, Palestinian fighters killed 6 Israeli soldiers at some checkpoint in the West Bank. And the following night, 4 elite units, Israeli elite units of very highly trained fighters, soldiers, were sent to 4 different Palestinian checkpoints. We're talking about 2002. This event happened in 2002, and at the time, the Palestinian police still had checkpoints in different places in the West Bank. Well, these were they were more symbolic checkpoints than anything. They could not stop me. If I would drive by, I would just wave at them and they would knowing that I'm Israeli, they would not stop me to inquire who I was and where I was going, or check my car, or search my car, or whatever. It was one of the symbols of the Palestinian Authority that has taken some authority in the West Bank, some autonomy in the West Bank, of parts of the West Bank. So the 4 elite units were sent to 4 Palestinian checkpoints in the different places in the West Bank, and their order was to kill all the Palestinian policemen who were at the checkpoints, whether they were armed or not, because a lot of times those Palestinian policemen were not armed, to kill them whether they were armed or not, whether they resist or not. And of course it was clear that all those Palestinian policemen had nothing to do with the killing of the Israeli soldiers the night before. It was a revenge operation, a revenge like terror organizations do, like crime organizations do, but not like what you expect from a democratic state. And supposedly Israel is a democratic state. And this is what was the first thing that drew me, that attracted me to this story. The fact that we pretend to be a democratic state, yet we use the tools or actions of crime organizations, of terror organizations. And the testimony on audio was so strong that I thought, wow, it could be very interesting to have it on video. Very simple video. Just the person sitting in front of the camera and telling what he has done on that night in 2002, what were the orders he received, and how the operation took place, how they killed, well, in his case, only 2 policemen, Palestinian policemen were killed, but we know that all in all on that night 15 were killed, also in the other 3 places. But to hear what was his role in this operation. Very simple. Not interested in more than that. Just to be able to show others, Israelis and others, you included, what was his orders and what he has done, what he has participated in. Because I thought it was shocking. Of course, this is a naive thought, but because when you think about it, and I'm sure that you with the history, your history, have already heard of such situations where soldiers or paramilitaries took revenge of innocent people or people who were not involved in any other action. Now you should all say, do like this, or not, or do like this. Now this was, the idea was to make a film that is, you can say, is a little bit out of my curriculum. My films tend to become more complicated for different reasons. Mainly the filmmaker has the tendency to complicate stuff, but I thought this was going to be a very simple film. In the beginning, I even thought maybe someone else should make the film, such a film. And as time passed, I realized that nobody was picking this up, and I decided, okay, I'll make a very simple film, a video of someone telling the camera his this short history. So at a certain point, I contacted him, and we met in a coffee shop. And well, he immediately said yes. I learned from him that he knew my work, and so I didn't have to explain much about who I was and what my filmmaking and what my politics was. And I told him what I wanted to do, this simple task I was looking to achieve. And he said, yes, let's do it. Later I learned that when we got to know each other better, I learned that he was a compulsive teller of this story. Like sometimes post-traumatic people are, a need to retell and review the traumatic event that marks their situation. And later when I met other people who knew him, some of them told me that they met in a bar, got to talk a little bit over a beer, and suddenly Z32 started spilling out. So he was a compulsive teller and reteller of this revenge operation story. And so he said, yes, let's do the film. But, okay, and here comes a but, which actually is a marking, a landstone before the but and after the but. And he said, but you cannot expose my identity. You cannot show my face. You cannot reveal who I am. Obviously, you understand, I already had an audio. I was not looking to have another audio. If you remember what we had with, or another audio or another text with subtitles, like the early testimonies that we exhibited in the exhibition. I was looking to look into, if I can say so, to look into the soul of this person who has killed innocent Palestinian policemen under some order from the army. It was clear to me that without his facial expressions, the video, I mean, who needs this video? Or that maybe I should take his text and some other person would repeat the text for the camera, like sometimes is done in, in documentaries where, in some documentaries where you cannot show the perpetrator or even a victim. Sometimes other persons, actors or none, are playing their role, which is a kind of, I'm not crazy about such films of reconstruction by others. So this was a huge but. But you cannot make a film, he said, in other words. And I had to, this is when the project really started, yes? Because I had to find a solution, sorry, of how to show him without expose his identity, how to show his facial expressions without revealing his face. And it took a while, until I came up with an idea. Oh, and obviously, you know, there's a possibility to put a mask on his face, a physical mask. You know, sometimes they put this anonymous kind of mask when people testify. Put some kind of a mask, and or put a hood on his face. Again, I didn't like those ideas. I wanted him to speak freely. Sorry. Someone with a mask or a hood speaks differently than someone that is, you know, sits naturally in front of the camera. Sitting in front of the camera in itself changes how you speak. So after a while, I mean, it took a few months until I came up with the idea of providing him with a digital mask. What does it mean, digital mask? What we did was scan the face of another person, create from the scanning, we scanned it from all sides, we created a digital 3D, three-dimensional model out of the face of the other person and placed it on the face of Z32 in the editing. We created holes for the eyes and for the mouth, which I hope you will agree are the organs of expression in the face, the facial organs of expression. And so, well, it was a very elaborate work. When I came up with this idea, I didn't realize how elaborate a work it would be and how much it will cost. It would have been cheaper to send him to Argentina to do a face job, bring him over, film him, and send him back to do a face job back to his, if this is possible. But this would definitely put him in a long legacy of war criminals. So what we had was the possibility to film him in a natural situation without any physical mask. We only marked a few black spots on his face that the softwares would be able to follow in order to track his the movement of his face. It's well, it's possible more now. It's so much more easier than when was it? 2000. We started 2006, almost 20 years ago. Now, when you look, when you have those applications who can place avatars on your face, and sometimes it looks not too bad, but it's done in real time, etc. So in the studio today, it would be much easier to do than at the time. And this was the solution for how to show him without revealing his identity, and how not to lose his facial expressions. And I was very happy with the solution. And we started doing interviews of him, telling and retelling the same story. First of all, you know, as a filmmaker, I know how people sometimes tell the story this way and with some details missing, or on another opportunity telling the story differently with more details or with other expressions. And I thought that filming him a few times with the same story would be good for the film. Also, we didn't concentrate only on that night, but he told us about the training period in the army. It was more about his service leading to this crucial night when he was sent on a revenge mission. But it was about his service, what he has done, and not about what he has been thinking while. And then one day, when we finished an interview, he said that he was not very happy with how he expressed himself, and that the night before, when he was thinking over what he was going, or how he was going to tell his story, he thought he would tell it differently, but somehow our presence, the cameraman, myself, another person, the researcher, somehow our presence made it for him a little bit artificial. The situation was a little bit artificial, and he thought he could tell the story differently. Okay. So I said, good, take the camera. It's, you know, those cameras are very simply, they are operated in a very simple way. They're not so complicated. Take the camera and mark the black spots on your face so we can later mask you. And do your own testimony at home alone without anybody interfering. Do whatever you like. And he took the camera and went home and apparently started filming himself, not shooting, filming. Filming himself. In this context, it's very difficult to say he was shooting himself. So he was filming himself shooting others, or telling about the shooting of others. And then, before I had the chance to review what he was filming, the second Lebanon war started. This was 2006. And because he was afraid that he will be called for service as a reserve soldier, elite unit, you know. These are very trained fighters, combatants. So he and his girlfriend, whom I didn't know, decided to avoid his possible service in the war and go outside, leave the country for a while, for 2 or 3 months, and they went to India. Supposedly for a pre-planned vacation, but actually so that he will not be called to serve. And I succeeded in finding him finding a camera for him in Delhi, a camera, because of the elaborate digital work that we had to do, we needed a small camera, simple camera, but high-end resolution. Today, all cameras, or most cameras, have high-end resolution, but in 2006 it was still it wasn't like the quality of cameras of small cameras were not. And they okay, so he received the camera in Delhi and did what he did. And a couple of months later, they returned. The war was over, and they returned, and he gave me the tapes. At the time, it was still tapes, imagine. Can you believe that there was a time where video was on tape? Yes. He gave me the tapes, and I looked at them, and beside him talking to the camera, you know, like doing not a selfie, but a selfie testimony, he also started filming his conversations with his girlfriend. And because he understood that if she will be in the film, then also she has to be concealed. So he also marked black spots on her face. So she was ready for digital refacing, if there is such an expression. And those conversations were very, very interesting, because apparently she was very critical of him for what he has done, for what he has participated in. And you know, normally you would think that if someone is a girlfriend, a partner of someone, that they would not have a daily argument about a horrible thing that this person did. Well, how can you lead a life like that? Yes, they were living together. They were not just occasionally going out together. But apparently they had, this was a serious thing between them. She was a pacifist. She didn't go to serve in the army. She refused to serve in the army. I will not get into how can you or you cannot serve in the Israeli army, but she didn't serve in the army because of her ideological beliefs. And they had arguments about, these were not violent arguments, as you will soon see, but these were serious arguments about, wow, time passes so quickly. These were serious arguments about what he has done, and with a lot of criticism. And of course, this, I was totally surprised. This was unplanned. He became a second, we call it second unit director. It became he became a co-director of the film, because I was interviewing him and he interviewed her, or there was a dialogue started, and it was. For me, those surprises are very encouraging. I love surprises like this. And okay, from that moment on, she became another protagonist in the film. And after I saw what he shot in India, I gave him my camera again and told him, do whatever you want with it. I didn't suggest anything because I knew I could only destroy. My suggestions can only be obstacles. I said, do whatever you feel like doing. And okay, and then this became a very important part of the film, and that deals with how we, as the civil society, accept our soldiers, that we actually send them, yes. Soldiers are the soldiers of the state, of the whole society. What it means to forgive, what it means to, how shall I say, to be sorry, to try to repent, if is repent possible. Okay, and now I would like to show you a clip from the film. First of all, you will see that they are both, you will see both of them in the clip in different scenes. You will see that they are both, maybe for some moments you will think that these are their real faces, but I can tell you that what you will see, the box of their face belongs to other people, other persons, a man and a woman. The eyes and the mouth belong to them. And so you'll see them in different situations. I think he starts on his own, and then later they have a conversation. And in the end, I also appear, and we will later discuss my appearance and how we got to where we got in this documentary. So please screen clip number 1.
היה עוד שוטר פלסטיני שרץ לתוך בניין של פח גלי, והאום שנפל, שאני יריתי עליו, אז כאילו עוד איזה מישהו לידי ירה בו ואומר לי, וואי, פגעתי בו, משהו כזה, כולו בהתרגשות. והוא שוכב מאחורי טרסה שמבצבץ לו החלק גוף התחתון, נגיד מהבטן ומטה, הרגליים. ואנחנו עומדים 3 אנשים ומחוררים את הרגליים האלה. יורים בהם, כולנו, אני גם, ואז המשכנו הלאה לחבר'ה שרדפו אחרי הבחור לפח הגלי, שבצדדים שלו היה 2 בלוני גז.
ניססנו כולנו את הפח גלי הזה, ואז הוא התפוצץ.
כל הפח גלי התפוצץ והתחיל לבעור מבפנים.
הרגליים האלה של האומלל.
ואז...
החום מגיע עד אליכם, איך זה, מה...
החום מגיע עד אלינו.
זה קצת סטרילי.
כן.
אבל לא נבהלתם שאתם בעצם הולכים
אוקיי, אז אנחנו, כאילו, כשאני רצתי ובקדימה הסתער הזה, אני ראיתי את עצמי בכלל מלמעלה. כאילו, אני ראיתי את עצמי מלמעלה,
ורואה את עצמי מלמעלה.
תוך כדי שאני כאילו מדמיין את עצמי רץ באיזה מבט של ציפור, הראש שלי חושב, איזה מגניב, תראה איך הגוף שלי מתפעל לבד, בום, מחליף מחסניות, לא מרגיש את הכאב, כאילו הגוף הוא כמו איזה רובוט וזה מרגש. ואני מסתכל מסביב ואני רואה את כולם רצים, וזה כיף, וכולם מחייכים, מה זה מחייכים? לא אבל כולם אנדרנלין, באפר, כולם באפר. כולם ממש שמחים, וכשאנחנו יורים ברגליים האלה, זה ירי של שמחה ממש, של ועם חיוך על הפנים. ואז הולכים אל כיוון הפח הגלי הזה, ויורים בו. ויורים, ופתאום הוא מתפוצץ, כאילו, התגובה שלנו זה לא אוי ואבוי, וואו, כאילו. זה התגובות, כאילו, המצב רוח הכללי הוא כיפי.
כאילו, כן אמרו לכם שאתם יוצאים לפעולת נקמה, כן בעיניים עצומות הלכתם אחרי זה ועשיתם את זה, ואתה אמרת שגם נהניתם מזה איפשהו, הייתם כל כך משובשים שיכלתם ליהנות מדבר כזה מזעזע.
כן.
וכן, כל אחד, כן אתה, אני חושבת שאי אפשר להתחמק מזה שאתה אחראי על הרגשות שעלו לך באותו רגע, ועל זה שלא חשבת לרגע אם זה נכון או לא נכון, אפילו לא עלה במחשבה המחשבה הזאת שמה אנחנו עושים, את מי אנחנו הורגים, למה אנחנו הורגים, למה אנחנו נהנים מזה. אז אי אפשר להאשים הכל את הגוף שגידל אותך.
זה ברור שזה עלה לי, כל השאלות האלה ברור שהם עלו לי. עלה לי איך אני נהנה מזה ולמה אנחנו הורגים וכל מיני כאלה, אבל זה לא... את יודעת, נגיד אם את עכשיו צריכה לספר את הסיפור שלי דרך העיניים שלי. נגיד, לעשות חיקוי שלי. אז את יודעת, כאילו אם הייתי עכשיו מדריך אותך בתור שחקנית לעשות את זה, הייתי אומר לך, כאילו צריך ללכת לאיזה מקום שהוא גם אכול רגשות אשם, אבל גם כשהוא היה בסיטואציה, הוא היה באמת בלי שום, כאילו כלים, כאילו בלי שום יכולת לעמוד נגד זה.
אני מבינה מה אתה אומר, ואולי כשחקנית הייתי מאוד מנסה להיכנס לדמות הזה, אולי היה קשה לי, כי לא יודעת, אולי בעיניך זה, או בעיני אחרים, הרבה אחרים, זה יראה כאילו אני איזה תמימה, או לא יודעת מה, צבועה אפילו, או יפת נפש, או לא משנה מה, כי אני פשוט לא מבינה איך אפשר להרגיש באותו רגע באמת איזשהו שמחה, הנאה, ערפול חושים וזה, אני באמת לא מבינה. ושוב פעם, אם אני מנסה להיכנס כשחקנית לדמות הזאת, אז אני אחשוב על רוצח, על משהו סייקוי, כאילו באמת, על איזשהו, ליידי מקבט כזה, לא יודעת.
לא ראיתי ליידי מקבט.
לא, זה מחזה.
כן, לא ראיתי.
משהו כאילו לגמרי...
מה, אז בוב, את חושבת שאני רוצח?
אני לא חושבת שאתה רוצח. אבל ברור לי מאוד למה המשפחות של האנשים האלה שהרגתם,
כן.
אני אפילו לא, מעניין אותי, אתם בכלל, מישהו מכם, או המפקדים, מישהו טרח להגיד עליהם מי הם, מה הם, איך קוראים להם, בני כמה הם, מי המשפחות שלהם.
לא, אבל זה, אף אחד לא ידע.
אף אחד לא ידע. בסדר, אז כאילו...
מה, אבל אני היום המסכה הזאת, בגלל שאני מפחד מזה.
נכון, אבל...
אף אחד לא ידע.
ברור שלאנשים האלה יש משפחות וחיים, ברור לי גם שהאישה של האיש הזה שמת, והילדים שלו רואים אותך כרוצח.
ואת?
מה ואני?
את רואה אותי רוצח?
באותו רגע שסיפרת לי פעם ראשונה את הסיפור הזה, אז איפשהו, ממש נבהלתי, לא רציתי להאמין שאתה מספר לי את זה, כי איפשהו עלה בי המחשבה הזאת של האיש הזה שמולי, כאילו, אשכרה הרג מישהו. מה זה הרג? רצח, זה רצח, זה נקרא רצח. הוא רצח מישהו, כאילו, זה היה בכוונה תחילה, זה היה רצח. הוא לא היה מחבל, זה לא היה התגוננות, הרג מהתגוננות, זה לא היה במרדף, זה לא היה שהוא היה מחבל, זה לא כלום, פשוט עמדו שם ועשו את העבודה שלהם, וכנקמה הרגו אותם. אז זה רצח. ואתה היית חלק מזה. אז בוא אני אגיד לך, זו סיטואציה מאוד מורכבת, אני גם, אני לא מספיק, נראה לי, יודעת את הפרטים, או מבינה את עומק הדברים, איפה שאתה היית נמצא, או אני מבינה בצורה שלי, אני בטוחה שאתה רואה את זה אחרת, אבל איפשהו, כל מי שהיה שם, וזה לא משנה אם הוא הרג פיזית מישהו עם הרובה שלו, או רק ירד, כאילו זה לא משנה, אבל כן, היה שם...
רצח.
היה שם רצח.
ואת סולחת לי?
אוי, אני מסתיר, רוצח אוי, בתוך הסרט שלי.
מעצמך לעצמך או מהאנשים שזה קרה, וזה כבר לא יקרה. אני כאילו מה
סתם בשביל הקטע, אוקיי, נגיד...
אוי, אני מסתיר, רוצח אוי, בתוך הסרט שלי.
הוא רצח מישהו. זה כאילו, זה דורש איזה מקום של לסלוח לי, או לקבל אותי, או...
זה מה שאמרתי, שבהתחלה זה היה מאוד קשה לי, גם בגלל זה נראה לי שלא דיברנו על זה כל כך הרבה, או לא נכנסנו לזה יותר מדי. בכל פעם כשנכנסנו לזה, אז או שרבנו, נוצרו איזה קרירות וריחוק גדולים.
גם עכשיו.
אוי, אשתי אומרת שאוי, אין מחילה לרוצחים.
וזה אכפת לך וזה מטריד אותך, אז זה כבר חצי נחמה.
אוי אשתי עוברת שאוי אין מחילה לרוצחי.
אתה אבל לא היית מתעסק עם זה ולא היה מטריד אותך ולא היית חופר בזה ועכשיו מתעניין בלעשות על זה איזשהו סוג של סרט או קיצור, אתה מוציא את זה החוצה, כאילו זה מטריד אותך, אתה חושב על זה, אתה מתעסק בזה. ואם לא היית עושה את זה וזה לא היה מטריד אותך, אז לא נראה לי שאיפשהו זה היה כאילו איזושהי, זה היה מין חוויה מהעבר, סיפור כזה שאתה לא יודע ממש מה לחשוב עליו. קיצור, זה לא הסיטואציה, זה לא רלוונטי, אבל...
אוי, אבל בינינו יש מחילה, עובדה שאוי, אני מסתיר, רוצה החול בתוך הסרט שלי.
ואז התקדמנו לשם.
So, well, I'm of course interested to know your impression from the face job, but maybe we'll leave it for later. But it was not meant to look perfect. I mean, if you could see, there is a moment where he pulls in his hand under the mask with a cigarette or with a pen or something, and you know, in the beginning, the special effects, the digital effects person cut his hand out so it would be outside of the mask, and I said, no, let's put it under the mask so if there is an illusion of a real face, it will collapse. And for me, it was very important, and it happens many times along the film. It's another way of telling you, don't forget there is a mask. Don't forget it's not his real face. But what happened once she enters the frame, she enters the film, is that from a film about a military action, it became a film about the reflections on the military action, the reflections on the moral deed, reflections on your values, on how you can live with what you have done and whether you can ever repent what you have done. And obviously she did things that I could not. I would not have be able to sit in front of him and tell him, but you are a murderer. And she obviously, wow, it's fantastic. I don't know how you were impressed with the scene, but for me, when I saw her playing with her scarf, what happened to her hands, it was more than if we could see her real face. The hands were, and okay, so there's a subtext to this film also about what expression means or how you capture expression. We will not get to it. It has to be, others have to but obviously this moment of here you get so many nuances, and it's fantastic when she says, but it was a murder, you're a murderer. And something that could not be achieved in writing. I could not write it. Maybe others could, I could not. Okay, and then the third mask arrives, the mask of the filmmaker. Now, in order to, of course, you have watched a clip from the middle of the film somewhere, or from 2/3 of the film, and I want to go back to the moment, or to when I came up with this digital masks idea, And, you know, this was a wonderful solution. I think, let me compliment myself. I think artistically it's brilliant. If you disagree, we'll hear it later. I thought it was artistically a wonderful solution to the problem, to the artistic problem that I had. I had an artistic problem. I needed to show him without showing him. So I found a great solution that for me was wonderful. But then it took, after we did some tests and understood how it was going to work, and of course, the immediate question was, how do we budget it? It was not in the original budget of the film, and you don't want to know the numbers. I'll just tell you that 3 people, 2 animators and 1 After Effects artist, worked on the whole film for 9 months, 5 days a week. And if you know anything about how the cost of how much such artists earn, you understand the numbers, or you understand the catastrophe. And so, of course, it took a while until I was free to deal with the implications of what we were going to do. And I realized, oy vavoy. Oy vavoy is, oh no, in Hebrew. Oy vavoy. I am like what I think. I am providing shelter inside my film to an assassin. The whole reason to make the film was to show the assassin. And what I've done was to conceal the assassin, to provide him with a safe house inside my film. And obviously this had to be addressed. You don't just do such an ethical. You don't take such an ethical decision without addressing it, or with leaving it suspended in the air, whether the audience will nail you or will nail the problem, or the power of cinema is sometimes the ethical problems don't surface. The ethical issue had to be surfaced, and by the filmmaker. And so now I have the tendency to appear in my films. If you have seen previous films, then I have the tendency to appear in almost all my films in different ways. Sometimes I talk to the camera, I tell a story to the camera, while other things happen in documentary sequences. In another film called August, I play 3 different characters: myself, my wife, and my producer. And we all appear in the same shot, like, with very low-tech split screen. You can see it on YouTube. It's all my films are free on YouTube, so you can watch them all. So, and I needed to find a way to appear in this film with all the reflections that it became a film of reflections, from a film about actions, details of a certain night. It became a film of reflections of aftermath. What does it mean, what I have done? What I have done the soldier, what I have done the filmmaker. And well, it's a bit of a long story, and I'm short on time. Eventually, I came up with this idea of singing it in a way. Also because of the masks, etc. It made sense that this is a tragic story, like a Greek tragedy. Yes, this is a character who, at a certain moment in his life, realizes that he has done something horrible in the past, something that he didn't have the power not to do, to avoid, but he cannot be reversed. This is a tragic character. If you don't realize you've done something horrible, like a lot of people, then it's one problem, or it's one possibility. But if you realize that you've done something terrible, and you know that asking for forgiveness is not a solution, maybe it will take off some of the burden from you, but it's not a solution to the facts that you have created in the world. So for me, it felt like a tragedy, maybe a Greek tragedy, or so I thought of taking it to the opera direction. Of course, you heard I'm not an opera singer, and the songs written are not operatic, but it's a little bit like an operetta. And so I approached a musician that I love very much his work, Noam Inbao, and he agreed to write the songs, both text and music, to the film. Although he's not the kind of professional musician, he's a professional musician, but you know, there are people who are professional artists, professional writers. You come to them, I want a song about how much I miss my mother. And they know how to write it. Of course, they talk with you, they do some research, but basically they can be commissioned. He's not, until then he was never commissioned. So there was no, we were not sure, and he said, I'm not sure I will succeed. And I said, okay, I'm not sure I will succeed in singing, because there's no record of me singing properly before. And indeed, we started a year of him writing. As I was editing, he would see the different cuts. He was writing, and I went to a singing coach to study, to sing. And then when the songs were written, or as the songs started to be written, we started rehearsing, not only me with the singing coach, but me with the musician, and I learned how to not only do it properly by the note, but do it properly dramaturgically. So what I want to show another shorter clip. I'm trying to think if there's something important. But anyway, I want to show another clip that will also expose the reflexive nature of the filmmaker's role in the film, which is, look, it's not common that in documentaries the filmmaker arrives and takes, you know, a lot of times they arrive, they ask a few questions, sometimes something happens between them and the protagonist, but they're not the main characters in documentaries, the film, unless it's a film about them. But here, the reflections of the filmmaker have become a very important part of the film. What am I doing? The filmmaker asks. And in a way, if I can say, this is a good question to all documentaries. What are we doing when we are making a film about someone's life? What are we doing? We are taking his story and retell it, rewrite it. We turn it into our story. What right do we have to do that? What personal characteristics do we have to acquire in order to be able to do it without violate their right on their story, on their character? So here's another part of the film with another song.
ואז זיהינו אותו וחזרנו אחורה לשם, לבחור ההוא ששוכב. ואז באתי, כאילו אמרו לי ללכת לעשות עליו וידוי הריגה, הסתכלתי, הוא היה מחורר מכל כיוון. מין, כאילו איש בן 55 עם שפם לבן, כאילו איש מבוגר, קצת שמנמן, שבאמת מחורר מכל כיוון, ברור שהוא לא חי, ואז רציתי לבדוק עליו אם יש לו נשק, ובאתי להרים אותו, והשני נגביסטים שהיו מולי ועשו לי חיפוי, הם התחילו לעשות לי, איכס, אתה נוגע בו עם הידיים? אל תיגע בו עם הידיים, איכס, איך אתה נוגע בו? ואז אמרתי, וואי, באמת זה נכון, אני לא מה שרוצה, אחרי שכבר נגעתי בו, אני לא יודע שרוצה לגוע בו עם הידיים, ואז עשיתי להרים אותו עם הרגל, להפוך אותו עם הרגל, וזה לא מה שהלך, אז כאילו הפכתי אותו חצי עם הרגל, חצי עם היד, כזה חצי גוף, צד אחד, ואז הצד השני לוודא שאין לו נשק, ולא היה לו נשק. זה ממש געיל, כאילו, זה פעם ראשונה שנגעתי פעם ראשונה שראיתי בן אדם מת, ופעם ראשונה שגם נגעתי בגופה, והיה לזה מין מרקם, כאילו, זה מה שאני בעיקר זוכר איזה מין מרקם כמו, לא יודע, משהו כמו ג'לי, משהו כזה, משהו רך כזה, שהרגשתי שאם, כאילו, שזה מחליק לי מהיד, או שאם אני אלחץ חזק מדי, אז כמו ג'לי יזרום לי מבין כל האצבעות של הידיים. וזה הגעיל אותי, באמת. ולא היה עליו נשק, ואז התקפלנו בחזרה.
אז איך אפשר לשיר על זה? במקום להתנער מזה, במקום פשוט למסור אותו, למי שיעשור אותו. אז איך אפשר לחיות איתן? עם כל הכוונות שלי, כשאין שולחן לדפוק עליו, כשאין בית דין לפנות אליו,
בואי תספרי את הסיפור שלי, כאילו את היית.
כאילו זה אתה, או כאילו אני עושה עכשיו הצגה של...
כאילו זה אני.
מה זאת אומרת? אני לא יודעת איך עושים את זה.
שמעתי לספר על זה כמה פעמים. אין לי סיגריה.
מה? הלכנו...
כן?
אני לא אספר את זה אחרת, נראה לי.
הלכנו.
אבל אני לא זוכרת את הפרטים אחרת.
לא משנה, דמייני אותם, תמציא.
טוב.
תמציא. ספרי לי, נו.
רגע, אני חושבת.
In the beginning, I say to myself, but I have nothing, I have not much to say. And then I realized that I have not much time left. Okay, so questions of who gains from this political films, who's, how can you talk with an assassin and not take him to the police or call the police, you know, which are real questions. Documentary filmmakers, journalists also, sometimes find themselves intervening in the landscape of horrific deeds, horrific things that happen, only as observers. And the question of when do you stop to be an observer and become a participant, these are serious, real questions that, well, I think should be asked. Every filmmaker should have a little orchestra at home, if you ask me. So that when the serious questions appear, he could, or she, could deal with those issues. Okay. Let's go to the first 54 years, which you will, I hope, watch very soon, tonight. There, I was returning to the original idea of the film Z32. Testimonies, people sitting in front of the camera, telling about what they did, and only, or they would tell whatever they like, or they told whatever they like, but on screen, you will be exposed to only what they have done. I was not interested in their reflections, in their thoughts, in their need for repent or for correction, for whatever. And in the film, there are many veteran soldiers who provide testimony. I didn't collect the testimonies. Unlike Z32, I was not there. Also in Z32, I was not there for big parts whenever they were together. I met the girl only after the film, when they came to see a rough cut. But in the first 54 years, these were testimonies that were collected by breaking the silence researchers, and I was never there when the collection was made. I was not planning to make a film. I was on the board of the organization, and only after the collection was concluded, I started editing it for us at the board to be able to watch trimmed testimonies and decide what to do with them. I mean, how to publish them. And this is where the film was born. I realized there was a larger scope. For those of you who were yesterday, I already said that a larger scope story to be told and not just a collection of a few testimonies or a single testimony like Z32. It was a larger scope story to tell about the occupation, almost the occupation as a way of life. And so my decision, my editing decision was, like in every interview, all those testimonies included both actions and reflections, and my decision was to cut all reflections out as much as possible. Very soon in the clip that you will see, I will contradict myself, and you will see some reflections there. But my intent, my effort was to cut out all reflections and leave only actions. What you do in order to occupy or to maintain an occupation. And indeed, the subtitle of the film is abbreviated manual for military occupation. If you want to have your own occupation, this film will save you a lot of trouble. It's a handbook. Yes, if you need to replace a tire of your car, you need the handbook. I'll give you a handbook for a little bit of a bigger operation than replacing, changing a tire of a flat tire. So the idea was to only deal with actions, and when I finally concluded trimming the testimonies, I realized that they come together as they are gathered together under certain themes. They make the manual, and of course this film didn't raise the same questions as Z32 because they were all exposed. Well, when you will see the film, in the end there are two persons who are not exposed, but basically all 40 or something witnesses are exposed. There was no concession. There was no for me as a filmmaker, I didn't have to I didn't have to deal with the ethical questions that Z32 raised, but I felt again, or needed, or obsessed with appearing in my film again, and I felt that the manual that I created needed a moderator, needed someone to lead you through it. And because I realized that none of the actual people who formulated the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, none of them would agree to come forward and openly or even expose the cynicism of the occupation, would agree to come forward and talk. I decided to play the role of the expert of occupation inside the film, and this needed a certain characterization, a creation of a character for a film. So I suggest, because we are really short and maybe you want to comment or ask questions, I suggest we watch clip number 3 and then maybe conclude and allow you give voice to your testimonies. So clip number 3, please.
כל הזיכרונות קשורות לעלה הזאת אני נכנסתי לבתים, ולא ש... נכנסנו, אני נכנסתי, זה לא שהייתי לבד, אבל אני רק על עצמי אספר. התחלתי לפגוע באבא, בילדה, בילד, באמא, לשבור את הבית. ולא עצרתי, לא...
היינו 10 או 12 עם המפקד מחלקה שלנו, סיירנו התקהלו ילדים והתחילו לזרוק עלינו אבנים. איכשהו הוא הצליח לתפוס ילד, אשכרה בן 8-9, והוא אמר לו לצעוק להם שיפסיקו לזרוק אבנים והתפזרו, או שהוא לא מפסיק להכות אותו. פשוט עם העלה, הסתובבנו אז עם עלות, התחיל לתת לו בפיקה של הברך, תצעק, והוא צורח, והם לא מתפזרים, והם זורקים, ואני כאילו התפוצצתי, זה היה כבר אחרי איזה חודש, כאילו, שהיינו שם, שאני הייתי כאילו, זה לאט לאט הצטבר, אירועים קטנים, כאילו, מפה ועד שם של אלימות, ופשוט הורדתי את האפוד והנשק וזרקתי עליו, על המפקד שלי, אז הוא שחרר את הילד.
When you take stock that the uprising against your rule is sweeping, that it is crossing over organizational boundaries, social and economic classes, crosses gender and generations, you have to respond accordingly. No one should be spared from the means you deploy, neither rich nor poor, neither men nor women, neither adults nor minors.
ואני מוצא את עצמי דורך, ואני מוצא את עצמי צועק, לעצור, ובסופו של דבר הצלחתי להשיג אותו, ויותר נכון הוא היה כזה מבוהל מאוד ופשוט נעצר במקום, והוא קורא על הארץ, מרים את הידיים, ואני מוצא את עצמי עם נשק, עם כדור בקנה, עם הנצרה משוחררת כבר, עם היד מעל ההדק. הוא לי ילד בן, אני יודע מה, 12, 13, משהו כזה.
הנשים האלה מתקרבות, ממש מתקרבות, ומקללות, וצועקות, ויורקות עלינו חזק, ומקללות אותנו מאוד מאוד מאוד, ואנחנו לא עושים כלום. יש טלוויזיה, ובאיזשהו שלב הצלם נסע. ואני ראיתי שהוא נסע, והיא ראתה, והאנשים האלה ראו שהיא נסעה, ובעיקר אחת מהן שהייתה ממש ממש קרובה אליי וקיללה אותי ואת אמא שלי ואת המדינה שלי ואת כל מה שרק אפשר, וירקה עליי והיא קלטה שהם נסעו ואני קלטתי שהם נסעו, והיא התחילה לרוץ ואני אחריה. וממש בתוך מרחק די קצר אני הדבקתי אותה, והדבקתי אותה בצורה כזו שהייתה לי עלה ביד, והעלה הזאת דפקה בה, והיא נפלה על הרצפה, ואני לא עצרתי. ואני הרבצתי לה. חזק. חזק, חזק.
Okay, so just to show you, to point the contradiction of my effort to avoid reflection, obviously the first speaker, he doesn't say, and it's not a verbal reflection, but his whole body is, it's like the hands of the girl with the scarf. It's full of reflection. You know exactly, or not exactly, but you learn a lot about his condition, about what he thinks, about what he has done from his body language. This was not, again, this was against my intentions, but I could not, this is a speaker that could not be taken out of the film. It's, for me, his it was whether I was consistent in my artistic plan or not. I couldn't care less. He had to be there. Also, the second speaker, you understand there is some reflection because he deserts in the middle of an action, and obviously when you desert, he's by the way one of my best friends. He's a very known artist in Israel, Guy Benner. So when you, obviously this is when you do such a desert in the middle of a military action, then it tells you a little bit about what went on in the mind of the deserter. And then you meet the moderator, the expert for military occupation, and of course, what a difference between this appearance of the filmmaker inside his film and the other appearance of the filmmaker in the previous film. This expert has no, if in Z32 all the expressions of the filmmaker are about the ethical and moral values of what he is doing in making a film, in making this kind of film, in making a film with an assassin as a collaborator, as a collaborator to the assassin in his escape from justice, if there is justice. In this film, this is a different appearance or a different character. This character promotes occupation. He suggests what you should do in order to obtain control. Yes, he says, if it's needed, in other words, if it's needed to beat up children, you beat up children. There are no, this is, how shall I say, a Machiavellic character who has no scruples, no guts aches. He is, in a way, a mastermind, a cynical mastermind behind the occupation. Now, look, the manual, the book of the supposedly abbreviated manual for military occupation that the film suggests doesn't exist as a book. Not in the safe of the Ministry of Defense in Israel, not anywhere. But in the minds of those who formulated it, it exists. Definitely exists, even though they may not admit to it. I'm sure that, again, you have your own leaders or protagonists that you can relate their secretive thoughts, secretive agendas, cynical agendas that of course have taken a lot of blood, I'm sure. There's no way. And they will not, and they don't have an orchestra in their living room for the moments when if those scruples surface. So basically, it's funny because maybe in the original plan, this was there was to be a balance between the two films in this talk, but Z32 took the most of the time, and Luckily enough, in a few minutes or when we conclude, you will have the opportunity to see the whole of the first 54 years. And I'm sure that everything that we have discussed, everything that was discussed in this room until now will resonate in a negative way, maybe. So if you wish to ask questions, to comment on things were said or on more general issues, here I am. Do we have, yes.
Hi, thank you. I have 3 questions. I'll be brief.
Start with one because I forget it.
Okay, was the protagonist from Z32 ever recognized by the public?
By people who did not know him, no. It was funny, in one of the first screenings of the film, it ran for a few screenings in the Tel Aviv Cinematheque, like, you know, maybe 10, 15 screenings. And in one of the first screenings, after the screening, someone I know came to me and told me, I saw him in the audience. I recognized him. And, well, I did not allow him to show in any public screening of I told him, we did such an effort to conceal your identity, we are not going to risk it. So obviously, what was very strong was that this friend, this viewer, thought he recognized him, but obviously it was not him, and so I don't know of him being recognized by someone who didn't know him. People who knew him, first of all, knew the story from beforehand, because he was a compulsive retailer. And secondly, of course, even his voice, though his voice was slightly changed, you know, the music of his speech is his own, and this cannot, I mean, it's very difficult if you know someone, even if his voice is digitally filtered, it's you can a lot of times, most times, recognize him. So people who knew him recognized him, but they were not the subjects of concealing his identity.
Second question. Are most soldiers who were part of these operations, both films, were they quite young at the age of the operations? Are these people who are in the initial 3-year, 2-year service? Or do they get called back even afterwards? Just, I was wondering about what their status in the society was when they were having to take part.
Okay, Z32 was in his initial service, which is 3 years for men and 2 years for women in Israel. It's mandatory. And he must have been 20 or 21 when it happened. And well, this was filmed. He was filmed 4 or 5 years later. So this is very close to when he was still in service. In the first 54 years, we have people of many different ages talking about the time when they were in service. One of the first speakers that you will see is by age over 90, and by the way, already dead by now, 3 years after he was filmed. He was a professional soldier and ended up as a general in the Israeli army. But most of the other witnesses talk about their initial service, meaning that they were between 18 and 22 or so. Some talk about their service as reserve soldiers, but it's not mentioned when this was, when someone was in initial service, or when it's just mentioned the time, the years that it took place, and at what region.
Okay, last one. I watched the film yesterday. You have different elements, including, as you said, yourself as the guide, but you also decided to put in a female voiceover.
I didn't understand.
Sorry, I watched the film yesterday, so you have another element of the female voiceover as another guide through the guide. So can you just reflect on what was your thought process behind this decision to have her as well?
Well, first of all, the female voice that you will hear is my partner. Is the voice of my partner, just to show you that we do a lot at home. Okay, this connects to another question. Why are there no women soldiers in the first 54 years? Because women also serve in the Israeli army, and some of them also serve in the occupation units, or in the occupation regions in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. So we have in Breaking the Silence, in the Breaking the Silence archive, we do have testimonies of women, but because most women who serve in the Israeli army serve in administrative roles, and very, or much fewer serve in combatant roles. So we have a less number of women testifying, and in the collection that we have, very few testimonies related to the issues dealt with in the film. And I kept one testimony in the film, one woman testifying in the film for a while, and until I realized that this was, in a way, a perverted kind of feminism to show that also women can be war criminals. And because she didn't fit in mainly for thematic reasons. So in a way, for those of you who have not seen the film yet, but there is also a voice, a narrator voice, a female narrator voice that in the film that is accompanying archive footage, and again, in a strange way, this is a not good enough compensation for the lack of women witnesses in the film. But again, there was nothing I could do. I thought that keeping a woman in the film just to show that there are women is not the right decision, and to start looking for really bad women, war criminals, for my film didn't sound a good idea either. So I took a really bad woman I live with to provide her voice.
Hello, I have two related questions. So,
where are you?
Here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So, first one is, what is your standing in Israel? Do you get attacked? Do you get obstructed in any ways or something?
Look, personally, until now, I was not attacked. I was not thrown. Fired from the university positions that I was holding. I kept on teaching in state schools until I retired a few years just before Corona. But there was something, well, I don't know if it's worse, but very significant, and that's ignorance. Ignorance, not that they don't know. They would ignore me. And when you are in the business of making films and publishing, etc., and you want to share, and the public ignores you, looks the other way, this is painful. It's quite painful. And, you know, the biggest crisis I had was after a film I made called Avenge But One of My Two Eyes, that will be screened here sometime next week, right? And this is my most successful film worldwide. It was selected for Cannes official selection, which, you know, a documentary in the official selection of Cannes is not a common thing, and etc. And it was released in cinemas in many countries in the world, and it was really a big success internationally. And, well, in Israel, I had the same number of maybe 10 or so Cinematheque screenings, and total ignorance. The culture press, maybe 2 or 3 critiques, but never a film dealing with the occupation never crossed the big gap from the culture columns to the socio-political columns in the newspaper. And this was very, very painful, because I thought that this film that had such a big success with a lot of prizes, etc., that would get some reaction. So, but yes, Breaking the Silence, for instance, gets attacked a lot as an organization. We are the most hated NGO, human rights NGO in Israel. We are called traitors and defectors, and some politicians accused us of collecting data concerned with the defense of the country and providing it to to our enemies, to the country's enemies. Sorry. And so yes, the organization is under big attack.
So my second question is kind of related to what you were saying, and it's I heard that the state, Israel, it doesn't block its subversive elements, let's say. It doesn't like forbid projections of the movies. But I heard that if you do material like you are doing, you don't generally get the chance to get a screening in your country, but they don't obstruct, you know, screenings in other countries. They actually support people who actually work against the state in that way, but they don't support them in their home soil, I don't know. So is that true? Do you have any experiences like that? Did the state ever support you abroad, and do you maybe know of any of your colleagues having such experience?
Yes, there is this paradox of first of all, look, most of my films, not the one that you will see very soon, most of my films were supported by state-funded cinema foundations. So money of the state reached the funding of the financing of the films, which shows you of the certain independence of the cinema foundations. Yet, this last film, that the first 54 years, did not receive any state cinema foundation funding, nor any TV channel. Unlike previous films, no TV channel wanted to broadcast it, and even all Israeli film festivals rejected it, although it was, again, a very big success outside of Israel, with lots of prizes and etc. So there is this paradox that the state has supported indirectly, the state has supported a lot of films, the making of a lot of films that criticize the state. And this is, yes, this is how democracy should be. It's unlike Iran or other countries where, Syria, where when the state realized that certain films were critical of their policies, the films were blocked, and copies of them had to be sent secretly to film festivals abroad. In Israel, they don't do it. Yes, it even happens, or it happened to me several times, that when I was invited to festivals outside of Israel, the festival received some support from the local Israeli embassy in order to pay for my travel, for instance, which is a little bit strange. But I guess that there is some explanation to that, and at a certain point, when I realized that I was actually serving the Israeli propaganda of being a wonderful democracy. In a democracy, you are allowed to criticize the occupation. And that if they would try to block, look at what blocking the films of Iran, etc., does to the international acclaim of the films. It's very clear that it's not serving the Iranian diplomacy. So yes, it's a paradox, and whenever I don't always know when if the organization would have asked the Israeli consulate or embassy for support, I would not know it. It's true that I don't say, I don't have a clause in my non-existent contract of saying, remember not to ask for support. I always know about it in retrospect. I don't. Well, it's not on my mind all the time whether, but yes, it happens. This is called whitewashing, and we are very good at whitewashing.
Thank you very much.
Hello, good evening. I have a question regarding the Z32 film. It's a little bit technical, but I'm very interested because you said he is an avid and compulsive reteller of the story. And I've seen in the clip that you use several variations of his story and that he wasn't very happy with the one he did first. So how did you choose what story to use, and what was your experience of working with several versions of the same story, and how he was telling them exact with the differences? If you can reflect on that for a while.
Look, he became a second director of the film, a second, on the floor director. He directed the scenes between himself and his partner. But he was not the director of the film in the sense that he had a say on the edit. In the contract that we had, he has a say, he had a veto on the question whether he was concealed or not on how he was concealed. If he didn't like the art or the 3D model that we created, he could not veto it. But he could veto if he would feel that he was not concealed enough. Obviously, he didn't feel he was exposed, so there was no veto. And at the same time, he did not have a veto or a say on the edit. It was I was the editor, I was the filmmaker. I took the responsibility of using maybe stuff that he was not happy with. Again, he was not happy, not with the facts. It was not a factual issue. It was a dramaturgical issue. He thought he could tell the story in a better way. So like actors in films, they do not, or maybe some actors do have a say. I can imagine Robert De Niro sitting in editing rooms and commenting on his acting. The only actor in my films that has a say on the editing is me. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's watch a film. Thank you very much.